Hey everybody, it's Candy, aka Brown Eyed Girl 69. How y'all doing? Well, today is June the 29th of 2026, and I am going to continue on my hitchhiking part series of the homelessness series. Um, my last video I left off that Daryl and I was in Gallup, New Mexico. Indian couple, Indian family that actually stopped, picked us up, and let us stay at their place on the reservation for a couple of days. I think they actually picked us up on Thursday. I think it was actually a Wednesday night. Thursday was the next day. That's the day that we spent picking up the cans and everything. And then on Friday, we're running around in town, I think. And then on Saturday, they drove me and Daryl to the border of New Mexico, Arizona. Now, I'd said earlier that they didn't have running water out at their place on the reservation because they didn't. They did have electricity, but they didn't have running water. They had to bring in their own water, and so the fact that they had to haul in water just for consumption purposes or possibly washing dishes and all that, there was going to be no way that they were going to be able to bathe, even by bringing in their own water. Now, I'm sure they did have their own situation set up to where they could, like, sponge bathe or whatever, but for the most part, they went to this one place, and it was called Speedy's, right there on the border, and it was a truck stop, and it had like a restaurant in there, gift shop. I think it had a laundry room, convenience store, and showers. The shower rooms were like totally amazing. And of course, the showers were timed, but it was like 30 minutes. That was enough time for you to get in there, get undressed, unpack all your stuff that you need, get in the shower, get out, dry off, get redressed, do what you need to do, and get out the door. Um, Trust me, it was amazing. Let's see. We didn't have no money, really, at that point in time. We did have money. I think we did have money. I think we did end up paying for them. And you just had to pay a little extra if you needed a towel, I think. Or maybe the towel was included. I think it was $7 per person. I think if you wanted more time, you could pay higher. But Daryl and I just took the 30 minutes. If you wanted to double book one shower, you could do that too. But Daryl wanted his own shower and I wanted my own shower. So we just went ahead and paid the like $15 is probably what it was. And then after that, we gave them hugs and they all took their showers too. And after everybody was said and done with their showers, we waved goodbye to them. We did have their contact information, and I did stay in touch with them throughout the years, and I still have their contact information. I haven't talked to them in a couple of years. but they are aware of how many grandchildren I have. Um, the last time I seen them was in December of 2019. When Daryl and I first met them, it was, what's that? We were heading out to San Diego. It was 2014. So yeah, it was like September. Yeah, September 2014. Latter part. Because we left Austin August 20. August 26th is when we left Austin. Went to Taos. And then we left Taos on September 9th. And this was around September 19th, September 20th. Well, we took pictures at the border. They had a little like teepee type thing set up there, like a little, you roll into a new state or whatnot, and you have your greeting center or whatever. They had one of those types of things there. So we went there, and they had like cigarettes and all that for cheap. So we went there in order to try to supply up on some tobacco, papers, whatever it was we could get. Utilized the facility. Well, we had just used the bathroom, but it was like a rest stop. So we were hoping that we could find somebody that was heading west and would be willing to give us a ride. We even stood at the end of the exit ramp from the rest stop onto the highway, but nobody stopped for us. So we just started walking, and we walked about probably about 4.5, 5 miles in that night. And we slept under a bridge. And the bridge was a nice bridge. It was the highway, and then it was like basically an underpass, and which was a nice 2-lane highway too. The bridge itself was being held up by all these pillars, and then these pillars were like in these big long pieces of cement. There was plenty of space for us to sleep on these like slabs. And then of course you had your side wall that went up to the top part of the underpass. So we slept there, and then the next morning when we woke up and we're just sitting there smoking a cigarette and chit chatting about having to get ready and get up on the highway, see if we can catch a ride. So man, this pickup truck pulls up to us and asks us if we need any coffee. And he said he was going up the road a little bit and he'd be back. So he brought us back some food, some fruit, some coffee, and some good wishes to wish us on our way. So we ate a little bit of fruit and we drank some coffee. We drank the coffee. And then we headed up the road and we just started walking because nobody was picking us up even though we had our thumbs sticking out. I had a big old huge backpack. I think I had probably a total of 3 packs. I had a backpack and then I had another backpack and then I had another backpack. So I had 3 backpacks. I think one of the packs actually had wheels. That had just been given me. It was like a gifted pack. So from one of the people that had picked us up earlier on in the trip. So I had that. So we needed to get to the next exit, which would be the first exit after you roll into Arizona, which was 9 miles in, and there was this place called Indian City, and it was like an Indian trade center, I guess, at one point in time. Basically, they sell a lot of jewelry there, a lot of just different Indian type artifacts, whatever, Indian, Native Indian, American Indian related. They had a little uh, food stand. I think it was separate business, but it was on the same land. And it was like an Indian taco stand or something like that. Little restaurant. We sat at the edge of that place all day with a sign, basically saying, we're going west. But we never got an offer for a ride, but people were throwing money to us and throwing us food and stuff like that. So we were taken care of. And the trade center part had bathrooms as well as the restaurant. So we just alternated in which ones we went to, so we wouldn't overwhelm one over the other throughout the day. And we kind of watched the people coming and going. Well, a storm was getting ready to roll in and rain, and we didn't know what we were going to do. And me and Daryl had even sat up by the trade post for a little bit, looking around to see what was around for us a place to crash for the night. But then we got news that a rainstorm was coming, so we're like, great. Well, we got to find cover. I decided to go inside and check out who was inside because it wasn't very busy. There was only like 2 or 3 cars out in the parking lot. So I went inside and looked around to see who all was in there. And there was this one guy. And I kind of observed him for a little bit, kind of meandered around by him, glancing around. And I asked him, I said, so are you heading east or west? He goes, oh, I'm heading west. I said, yeah. I was like, where's your final destination going to be? He goes, oh, Northern California. He goes, but for now, he goes, heading to Phoenix to meet a buddy. And then we're going to take a airplane to Northern California. He's like, why? Why do you ask? And I was like, well, my husband and I are traveling, and uh, we're the hitchhikers that were sitting out the edge of the road earlier. He goes, oh, yeah, I seen you guys when I pulled in. And I was like, and we were just wondering if we could happen to hop a ride with you if you're heading west. I was like, we're only looking to go as far as Flagstaff. Our final destination is actually San Diego. And he was like, oh. He's like, well, here's my only thing. He goes, I don't want no weapons in my vehicle or drugs. And I will search your bags if you want a ride with me. I was like, okay, that's cool. I was like, let me go talk to my husband. And he goes, yeah, yeah. He goes, I'm going to meander around here and I'll let you know here in a few minutes after I think about it if it's a for sure thing or not. And I was like, okay, cool. So I go told her, I was like, hey, we might have this ride with this kid. He just don't want us to have no drugs or any weapons. And Gerald's like, well, I got knives, but... And he goes, well, we ain't got no drugs but pot. I go, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, so... Well, just be honest with the guy. So he comes out a little bit later. He goes, well, I thought about it. He goes, you guys seem like, you're pretty cool and all. I told him, I was like, hey, man, if you want to look through our bags, you can. I was like, but, we don't have no weapons. I was like, my husband has a couple of knives, but they're packed away. And I was like, as far as drugs is concerned, we only have weed. and not a lot of it, just enough for personal consumption. And he was like, cool. He goes, I have weed too. He's like, so let's go. So he gave us a ride, and when we were getting closer to Flagstaff, he decided to just go ahead and gas up there. And we went to this convenience store. He bought us a little bit of food, and went to the bathroom, all that. He gassed up his car, bought us some food. And when we got back out to his vehicle, he's like, so, since y'all don't really know where you're staying here, or any good place for me to drop you off for the night, since it is going to storm, why don't y'all just make the trek with me to Phoenix? He goes, y'all are just hitchhiking, right? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, well, you could probably hitchhike out of Phoenix. It's just easy and get to California, right? He goes, there's not like any time frame that you have to be out there, right? And we're like, no. He's like, cool. So we just hung out with him for the ride to Phoenix. And when we got to Phoenix, he said he was getting a hotel room and that he would get us one too, which was really, really cool. So we had a hotel room. He had a little bit of weed. We had a little bit of weed. We had a little smoke sesh. Got some sleep. Next day, get up. He takes me and Daryl to breakfast. And took Daryl to the Guitar Center. Bought him a little mini Marshall amp. And batteries, everything that Daryl would need to possibly utilize it, you know. Even though you could plug it in to charge it, or you could power it with battery. So it was really, really cool. And then he gave us a ride. I think we were in Tempe. And we wound up staying the night in Tempe that night. And then the next day we made it from Tempe to Phoenix on bus. Oh, and I think Eric had given us a little bit of money too. We really thought it was going to be easy to hitchhike out of Phoenix, but it wasn't as easy as we thought. And we tried all sorts of different ways, methods, different parts of town, by the highways. We utilized our money taking buses. Sometimes we couldn't get back in time, so we wind up staying in some different location. And we tried getting out, like over this weekend, period, when traffic was heavy, but we weren't having any success. Eric was already off to Northern California, and then he would be coming back to Phoenix and then driving back to Chicago. He did all this in the time frame that we were there. He felt bad when he got back to Chicago and realized that we were still there in Phoenix. So he sent some funds to get us onto a bus to San Diego. And our whole time that we spent in Phoenix was 3.5 weeks. I am going to make a video series, I've decided, on all my homeless stuff. And like, this is on my hitchhiking part of being homeless. I'm going to make videos on different cities and how long we stayed there and all the different resources and stuff combined in one video for that specific city. So yeah, we make it to San Diego, and that will be a video in itself. But this is specifically about hitchhiking. So basically, our hitchhiking ordeal had come to an end. We're no longer hitchhiking. We utilized hitchhiking as a necessity sort of thing. We only did it when it was needed. We didn't utilize it as a lifestyle. So the next time we would have hitchhiked would have been when we were leaving Mount Shasta, California, to head north. And basically, we were in Wairika. We were in Mount Shasta. Then we took one of their little community buses all the way up to Wairika. I got in our hotel room that night before, and the next day I utilized the library to try to get us a ride on through Craigslist and a couple other avenues, but wasn't having any luck. So we decided to just go ahead and go to the highway and fly a sign to see if anybody would pick us up. And what was pretty cool about it was we had been sitting there for a while, a couple hours actually, nothing coming to fruition. So I started looking around to see if there was a place that Daryl and I was going to be able to camp out for the night there. And we're sitting there. Daryl's like, "No, we're going to get a ride out of here. We don't have to worry about that." And I was like, "Are you for sure?" And he goes, "Yeah, somebody will roll through here in a little bit. That's going to, help us out." So we're sitting there, and we could see the underpass, so we could see the oncoming traffic that's going to turn to come onto the highway. Because we're sitting right there, basically right on the on-ramp, like right as you're getting on, where there was plenty of space behind us and up from us where a car could pull over to pick us up if needed. Okay, so we're sitting there, and we see the underpass, and we see this van sitting at the light. And Daryl goes, "There's our ride." I was like, "Oh, yeah?" He goes, "Yeah, there's our ride." A few seconds go by, the light turns green, the van is turning onto the ramp. Next thing you know, it pulls over. This dude jumps out of the vehicle, goes, "Hey guys, where y'all headed?" And we're like, "North." He goes, "Hey man, cool. Let me help you with your step. We'll give you a ride. We're heading north as well. We'd be happy to have you join us. This is me and my wife and a dog, if that's cool." And we're like, "Yeah." This dude was a huge burly guy. We had a cart that had all our stuff in it because we just come from San Diego. Anyway, we had this huge cart. He just picked it up, tossed it in the van, helped us get in, started rolling down the road. Turned around and asked us if we smoked bed. We're like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Cool, I got one loaded." I looked at Daryl and Daryl looked at me. He winked, said, "I love you." It was a moment that Daryl and I had shared before on a couple of different levels, different situations. Um, Amazing miracles. So anyway, this couple picks us up and basically takes us to Ashland, Oregon. They drop us off in Lithia Park, which is basically the center hub, middle of the downtown area of Ashland. And we started taking information that had been given to us prior to Ashland. And trying to maneuver our way to where we needed to be. And we eventually found that place that evening, and then woke up the next morning to where we needed to be, exactly where we needed to be. And that's where we utilized and where we called home for the next 2.5 years. Even though out of that 2.5 year period of time, 6 months of that time, we weren't there. But we utilized that place and called that place home from June of 2015 until January 2018. And that pretty much was the end of the hitchhiking journey. Anyways, peace, love, hugs, nugs. Until the next time, I'm out.